Welcome to ConciergeQ Conversations with Chantal Westerman.
Hello there, I'm Chantal Westerman, and welcome to ConciergeQ, the online travel magazine where you'll find the best travel information and all you want to know about wherever you're going. And one of the ways we do that is right here with ConciergeQ Conversations. ConciergeQ Conversations are what we like to call intimate travel portraits with really fascinating people from all over the world, especially today, let me tell you. We like to think of them as our local travel experts in the know. So please remember, you can always follow along with us at ConciergeQ.com. And today we're talking to, well, before I tell you who we're talking to, I want to give you a little preface. Every single year in my life, I pick a muse, someone who is a person in the world who I admire or aspire to be more like. Sometimes it's Catherine Deneuve because I think she ages so beautifully. Other times it's somebody like Oprah Winfrey who's doing so well in the world. This year, my muse, who I choose, is Leigh Boyle. Leigh is much younger than me, but what she's done in the world is so remarkable that she is my muse and she is the person who I aspire to be for 2012, just so you know. In October of 2010, armed with 4 nail polishes, 1 nail clipper, 2 nail files, a huge tub of apricot body lotion, and her iPod fully loaded with boy band ballads and the best of Taylor Swift, the Lipstick Project's founder, Leigh Boyle, 20-something, and she's a Canadian philanthropist, first hit the pavement of Mekelle. Now, Mekelle is in Ethiopia, and she entered the Hamlin Hospital. Her goal was very simple. It was to bring light and love to female patients through beauty treatments, while painting ailing ladies' nails, many of whom are living with a debilitating condition called fistula. Now, Leigh's simple and pure idea was inspired by a British Red Cross crate of red lipstick that helped nurse the living dead of Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. It has enormous power, as you can imagine, behind its inception. I mean, just think about it. Women all over the world love feeling beautiful in their own skin. And a tiny little bottle of nail polish has the power to unleash long since forgotten radiant self-confidence, even in the most unlikely of women. Through the Lipstick Project's success, in July of 2011, the girls from Alabama Judson College joined Leigh Boyle's growing manicure crusade. A favorite reoccurring experience, they say, was when a woman picks Fire Engine Red. And with that, I introduce you to Leigh, my muse for 2012. Hello, Leigh.
Hello, Chantal. How are you?
I'm very, very well here in snowy Idaho.
Wonderful.
And so happy to talk to you.
It's nice to talk to you as well.
I was reading a book. I'm in the midst of a book right now by James Hillman called The Soul's Code. The Soul's Code. And in it, he talks about the fact that even before we are born, there is a tiny seed of destiny in us that projects us forward, that tells us what we are to do in life. And so often, people don't get around to it until they're older. They don't get around to it because their parents say, become a doctor, become a lawyer. And I think your soul's code, I think your acorn, that seed inside of you, your calling, as James Hillman refers to it, was to do this work. Would you say that you've been called to do this work? Am I right?
I think that I have. It's been a rather circuitous route that I've gotten here, but I was never good in hospitals. My family, most of them are doctors or nurses, but my brother and I both went into the arts. I started in journalism and communications, and I went to the hospital because I was actually just interested in the condition of obstetric fistula, and I wanted to know more, and was so deeply moved by what I heard there and what I saw at the hospital that I couldn't help but want to do something. And so I offered up my bed sheet changing, toilet scrubbing, floor cleaning, experience, and they turned me down and said that they didn't need any help. And so I left a little bit dejected, but then they called me a few days later and told me that if I could do anything to improve the women's quality of life in the hospital, that I would be more than welcome to do that. And so the Lipstick Project was born. And I used to model, and I used to work in the fashion industry, and I don't wonder if all the different steps in my life led me towards working in Ethiopia and also understanding that women the world over want to feel beautiful, and that a simple splash of color across their nails could do that.
I think clearly it has led to that. And it's also made you, I was going to say on some level, but on every level, really, a messenger, a crusader for this cause. Because, for example, I'm just blessed to know your mother, who's a lovely friend of mine. And I would never have known about this had your mother not casually mentioned it over lunch one day. And then I started reading Leigh's blog, which is just one of the best things in the world. And I am just driven to be a part of this. Do you find that it's contagious? Do you find that so many people want to help you with this project?
I definitely think it's contagious. And I've found that whenever I meet someone new and I begin to tell them about the women in Ethiopia and around the developing world who are living with obstetric fistula, everyone wants to help, and everyone wants to help in their own way, whether that's donating money, whether that's spreading the news further, whether that's actually going overseas and meeting the women and helping them there. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to get involved. And I think it's because it's a condition that we, especially as women, cannot imagine living with. It just seems so unjust that a woman in today's day and age would still be subjected to.
Yes. Well, let's see if we can't get even more people involved. So I realize it's a painful image and graphic, but I believe if you don't look at the problem, you can't solve the problem. So let's talk about fistula. What is it?
Obstetric fistula is a childbirth injury that is caused by a very long obstructed labor, which can last several days, and even sometimes it can last over a week. And what the result is the woman either will die or she'll die in labor, or she will be left with this debilitating childbirth injury. So basically what happens is during the obstructed labor, which is a labor that would, in our part of the world, would be easily solved by a cesarean section. But for these women, they don't have access to that type of technology. So they give birth in their homes. And so when there's an obstructed labor, the pressure of the baby's head against her pelvis will greatly reduce the blood flow to the soft tissues that surround the bladder, the vagina, and the rectum. Mm-hmm. So if the mother survives, this labor often ends with the fetus dying, and eventually it decomposes enough to come out of the mother. And as the fetus comes out, so too do those damaged tissues, which leave holes, either one or two holes between the vagina and the bladder and the vagina and the rectum, which causes the woman to leak waste involuntarily through her vagina, as there's no sphincter.
I can't imagine that happening. What are the women like? Are they angry? Are they bitter? It seems to me they would be, but according to your blogs, they're so not that.
The women are hurt. They are sad, and they are at the same time full of hope. The hospital that I was volunteering at is called the Hamlin Hospital, which was established by Drs. Reg and Catherine Hamlin in 1974 in Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia, and then was spread to satellite hospitals in Ethiopia, Somaliland, and Afghanistan as well. The women that come to the hospital receive treatment for free, and they stay anywhere between 3 weeks to over a year, depending on the severity of their injury. In terms of what they're like, most of the women come from rural communities, so they're poor. They are often uneducated and illiterate. As you can imagine, the condition produces quite a horrible smell. And
yes.
So often their husbands will leave them and their families will leave them, because in a place where people are uneducated and don't understand why this condition has occurred, they often attribute it to that the woman is cursed by God. As such, they abandoned her. And the latest statistic is that at the Addis Hamlin Hospital, 53% of the women who were there had been abandoned by their husbands. In other parts of the world, in India and Pakistan, the number goes higher and higher to 70 to 90% of the women. So as you can imagine, it involves all parts of life, religious life, social life, family life, everything is affected by this condition.
Do you feel like you and your work and the people around you, the doctors at this hospital, are making progress? Are you making a dent in this? Because it must be something that goes so deep and affects so many thousands of women that we here in America, for example, have no idea, no concept of it.
We are making progress, I think. The hospitals in Ethiopia and around the developing world are doing amazing work. But the numbers point to the fact that we are still struggling. For example, in Ethiopia, it's estimated that 9,000 women a year develop obstetric fistula, and approximately 1,200 of those women are treated every year.
Oh my, that's not a good statistic. It's a beginning. It's progress, but
it is progress. You're right. And it's interesting because it was the first record of obstetric fistula was actually in the southern states on a cotton plantation, where an obstetrician gynecologist noticed this condition in two of the slaves that were working there, and he practiced surgery on them to try and heal them. And then actually the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City used to be a fistula hospital. But of course, since the development of modern medicine, obstetric fistula has all but been eradicated from the developed world. So, and I think that the nature of the women in the world who are affected by it is such that they are shut off from the world. They are hidden away. And so it's taken a long time for people to hear their stories because they are closed off from the world. But people like Nicholas Kristof with the New York Times and Oprah have started to bring these stories to the forefront of the news media. And so lots more people are hearing about it now. But I think that education is one of the most important parts of eradicating this childbirth injury.
And if you had a fanciful metaphor here, but if you had a magic wand, what could you do? What would you want done? What's your priorities of things that you need and things that you want to see happen?
I would say that number one priority would be supporting organizations that are implementing emergency obstetric care in hospitals and clinics all over the developing world. I think that's priority number one, because prolonged labor will always be a problem for women, whether in the developed world or in the developing world. So I think access to proper emergency obstetric care is number one priority. And then after that comes things like prevention through education, things like that, and improved transportation as well.
You know, one of the things that I'm struck by when I see your blog, which I will miss, right? Because you're in Vancouver now.
I am. I just got home a few weeks ago.
Oh, your parents must be so happy to. I bet you that was a big, big celebration.
Yes.
Well, now I'm filled with questions. So now that you're in Vancouver, do you start a lipstick project there? I mean, is there fistula in Vancouver?
There is no obstetric fistula in Vancouver, but there are many women living with diseases like cancer and HIV and things like this. And so my friends and I are actually bringing the lipstick project to Vancouver hospitals and hospices as we speak. And instead of using students and people like this, we're actually asking professional estheticians and makeup artists and hairdressers to volunteer a few hours of their time every month to help women who are in oncology wards and who have high-risk pregnancies and who are living in hospices, to help them feel beautiful as well. And I'm fairly sure that red will be the color of choice for most women's nails in these places as well, as we like to say that it's the color of courage.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Are you driven to go back? Do you feel like I have to go back there?
I do. I feel driven to go back, but I know that I want to go back as a doctor. And so now in January, I'm starting pre-med studies at a university in Vancouver for 2 years, and then hopefully we'll be off to medical school for 4 years, and then trained as an obstetrician gynecologist with the hopes of one day going back to somewhere in the developing world to help women who have this condition, as well as train national doctors and midwives to take over.
I wish you could see the smile on my face. It makes me so proud of you and so proud to know you. You'd think I was your mom instead of Helen, your mom. Really and truly. So I was going to say, when I read your blog all the time, one of the things that struck me were the beautiful photographs you took. I don't think I've ever seen such beautiful women. Their faces, it's like they were all lit from within. Is that hope, or is that the fact that they had a little touch of beauty with the Lipstick Project? What do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from within them. Perhaps the Lipstick Project helped uncover it, but I think it's a spark that comes from within. And the women, at least the ones I was working with in Ethiopia, are incredibly strong. They're incredibly courageous, and they believe that they will have new life after this surgery. And they just want to go home to their families and back to the life that they had, and they want to go home dry.
Yes. Let's see if we can't get some more people to head over to Ethiopia. So this is ConciergeQ. It is an online travel site. So let's talk a little bit about Mekelle. I loved your thoughts about the town. Tell us more about the most creative, spiritual, or emotional place in Mekelle.
I would say that the most spiritual place is just north of Mekelle in a mountain range called the Geralta Mountain Range. It is home to many, many, many rock-hewn churches that date back to the 14th century. And they're up on the top of the mountains because the Orthodox Christians build their churches high up because they believe that they are closer to heaven that way. And so you drive through this very beautiful open plain valley with the mountains on your left-hand side. And then you stop and you hike up between these different crevasses and up the backside of different mountains. And sometimes you have to free rock climb to get up there. But all of the steps that you take are worn into the rocks over the many, many years of people walking up to these churches and making pilgrimages to these churches, and end up on the top of these incredible mountains with beautiful views. And then you walk along cliff sides and things like this to go into these tiny little rock-hewn churches where for centuries people have worshipped and prayed and communed.
I can only imagine what the call to morning prayers sounds like there. It must be an exquisite sound.
It is incredible. It happens very early, so sometimes it's hard to appreciate, but the call to morning prayer is very beautiful, and there is a very peaceful coexistence between Orthodox Christians and Muslims in Ethiopia. And so the calls to prayer often happen at the same time. So there's this very interesting mix of voices coming over the loudspeakers.
People have told me that coffee actually originated in Ethiopia, so I imagine that had to be your favorite smell.
It did originate in Ethiopia, and the coffee ceremony is an integral part of Ethiopian culture. And anytime you visit someone in their home, it's almost mandatory that you stay for coffee. And coffee there is like in many other parts of the world, it's 3 cups of coffee, and it's strong. So you don't want to do it too late in the evening, but it's wonderful. And they do the whole process of washing the raw beans and stoking a fire and then roasting the beans over the fire, crushing, boiling the water, and then adding the grounds to the water. It's a wonderful tradition, and it's very much a part of Ethiopia's past, but also its future. And many of us who have lived and worked there are excited about the potential Ethiopia has to make this crop part of their future development.
Well, I certainly hope and pray that as you go on to become a doctor in medical school, that you don't lose your time and ability to write, because just you describing these things for us here on ConciergeQ paints such an extraordinarily beautiful picture.
Thank you. I hope I never stop writing, and I don't want to. I find it so easy to write and take photographs when I'm in Ethiopia because the stories that people share are just incredible. And so to me, it seems easy to translate to the page. And it also doesn't seem fair that I get the credit for it because it really has nothing to do with me. The life that people live there is so simple and yet so extraordinary at the same time. And I think it's sort of what you were talking about before, about the spark that dwells within the women at the hospital, especially, that they're like any other woman in the world. They want to have a good life. They want to have their family around them. They want to have children, and they want to be able physically to support their family. They don't want to be debilitated by an injury or anything like this.
Before I go, and of course I could talk to you for hours, but before I go, I want to know how this has changed you as a young woman.
The experience in Ethiopia changed me because I learned, first and foremost, how to make space for people, especially through the Lipstick Project. I learned that to take time to be with someone is probably the most valuable thing that you can do, and not only for that person, but for yourself. I think that, especially for the women at the hospital, they haven't been touched, they haven't been spoken to, they haven't been loved in sometimes years and years and years. So to have someone touch them and look them in the eye and treat them like they are a beautiful person, which they are, I think has the power to change their day. And I think that's something that I've tried to bring back into my life here in Canada, is that every person is valuable, and every person, you can change their day with a simple conversation or a smile.
Yes, you can. You can. I'm so glad I picked you as my muse. Leigh, I'm sure that lots of people listening to this, and the people who listen to this at Everyday Opera, are going to want more information. So where does someone go for more information about you and the Lipstick Project?
Well, you can find us online at www.thelipstickproject.ca. You can find us on Facebook by searching The Lipstick Project. And you can follow us on Twitter under the username ProjectTLP.
Thank you so much, Leigh, for taking time to talk to us, and I hope you'll do it again soon.
Thank you, Chantal. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, anytime, and many times to come. Please do remember you can learn even more about the Lipstick Project and Leigh's wonderful insider trips for Mekelle, Ethiopia on ConciergeQ.com. And we invite you to discover more great programming at everydayopera.com, where you will hear this broadcast as well. I'm Chantal Westerman with ConciergeQ Conversations, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.